Buenos dias, buenas tardes, y buenas noches, bonjour, bonsoir. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you may be. Jay Slater case. And busy day. Just want to put this video out there because there are four remaining points in Lorree's list of reasons why she thought things were pointing towards accident. And I do need to finish off this list because every single one of them in the list to me actually points the other way around to foul play. And it has been instructive that Lorree has given this list because finally we see in the AG mind exactly why they have been so misled into thinking there is an accident involved here and there's no foul play or criminality in the background. It's a shame that Lorree can only do bullet points. It's a shame she can't expand on any of these. It's a shame that she can't counter anything that I put out there. It's a shame that in her latest videos she can only do it in the dark, believe it or not. I mean, I guess, she's a third of the way there. So we have a video, it's a voice that we presume is Lorree's, but video in the dark, I don't know what the problem is here. I mean, presumably Lorree does have a face. Presumably it's a face that Lorrie's comfortable with. I don't know, but there we go. We have a darkened video, but we're a third of the way there. If we have a voice, next we might get a face, and next we might actually get a voice-to-voice debate where we actually exchange ideas in a robust but respectable way. And I would say that there's a lot here that we could exchange ideas on, as opposed to the perennial type, edit, delete, remove, type again, and all that. What have you. Now, Lorree's bullet point, she says, number 10. Here is, in Lorree's mind, a very warped mind, I would say, another reason why we should think accident rather than foul play. And that reason is the official cause of death. The official cause of death. I would say straight away, what's wrong with the unofficial cause of death? Unofficial cause of death, someone whacked this guy over the back of the head and dumped the body. What's wrong with that? Okay, let's have a look at the official cause of death. Do we have a problem with that? We do. We certainly do, because there is no official cause of death. When you have the pathologist saying there could have been a push, I don't see how there's an official cause of death. What we have is someone called Adderley that has the power, he's invested with the power by the state to declare, in his opinion, to give his verdict on the most likely cause of death. It's not definitive. Believe me, if it were definitive, we would never have in the annals of human history a coroner whose decision ever got reversed. But it has happened. Of course it's happened. Can't remember the name of the person involved, but someone up in York, I remember, coroner's decision was reversed. So just because there's an official cause of death, i.e. a coroner's verdict, doesn't mean that any arrow is pointing either way in my book. What I would say points towards accident is the fact that this official, this coroner that pronounced cause of death must be accidental, is the very same coroner that, despite all his efforts and despite Debbie Duncan knowing all of the key witnesses and able to contact them, managed to get 0 out of 5 key witnesses to attend his inquest. Now, someone who fails on that scale, 0 out of 5, I would say their official cause of death announcement, verdict, decision is worth nothing. If you are that bad at getting, after all, this is supposed to be an accident, who could possibly object to giving information about a dear friend that died in an accident? If your record is 0 out of 5 to get witnesses to court, I don't think your verdict or your decision is worth anything, honestly. You've already failed before you've got to the point of making a decision. And we've also got to bear in mind that this decision, this verdict is based on very, very little evidence. Very little evidence whatsoever. In his own words, Coroner Adderley said that he will be using, or he can base his decision, his verdict, solely on the evidence heard in court. Now, that beggars the question, is there a whole load of evidence that we've heard outside of court? Oh, you believe me, there is. I mean, there's all of what the media put out there. all of what Martin Williams Thomas put out there, all of what the sleuths have put out there. There is absolutely mountains of evidence that was never heard in court. So when Adderley says he can only give his verdict based on the evidence heard in court, you have evidence heard in court Thursday and a little slice of Friday. No, Friday was just dedicated in the end to summing up and giving a verdict. So we have, Thursday here, and that's it. The total amount of evidence outside of the court is absolutely enormous. So here we have a decision made on someone that didn't refer at any point, it seems to me, to the report, the 600-page report that Debbie says she received from the Guardia Civil. Here is a verdict that is based on, nothing at all regarding the witness statements by people like Stephanie Martin, I think it was, the toxicologist. I mean, where's the evidence there? Stephanie Martin just gives this whole spiel about what was in Jay's system, what toxins were in Jay's system. And then where's the follow-up question? Where's the coroner saying, now, given that cocktail of substances in Jay, please tell us, Miss Martin, what effect that would have had on his head, on his mind? What can we deduce from the effects of it? No. So we have Adderley saying he can only base his verdict on the evidence heard in court. But the person who decides what evidence is heard in court is Adderley. We've got this vicious circle. He's making a verdict based on what he allows in court, and then he says, well, he can only base it on what he heard in court. This is nonsense. I think everyone knows it's nonsense. I think Lorree knows it's nonsense too. But in her bullet points, when she says official cause of death, just having the word official there, official cause of death, makes it sound like an indicator that swings towards accident. It really doesn't at all. In fact, because the whole role of the coroner stinks so badly here to anyone that can observe neutrally what's going on, I would say that whole verdict process really did point towards foul play. A simple example would be when Warren heard Spanish testimony that the boy came out of the Airbnb wearing jeans. That was Warren saying, wait a minute, this isn't right. I know this is not right. And Adderley's explanation was, well, witnesses get it wrong all the time. Oh dear. Well, if witnesses get it wrong all the time, how the hell do you come to a verdict that makes any sense? How do you cherry pick, Coroner Adderley, the witnesses that to you made sense and the witnesses to you made no sense? This is basically a tyrant or a dictator that says, I've reached my decision before I do anything. This whole process is just a means of showing the world that I can pretend that there is a process here. There wasn't. So I would say Lorree is way, way off when she says official cause of death is some kind of evidence that there was no foul play involved. Her bullet point number 11 is digital analysis. Not sure what she means by that. Digital analysis. Digital analysis of what? Jay's phone? Is that what you're talking about? Well, let's, for the sake of argument, go with that. Lorree's digital analysis refers to Jay's phone. Well, of course, Jay's phone is just Jay's phone. There never was any indication, none at all, that Jay Slater was ever where we were told he was. And that is the key point here. If we can just move the digital analysis aside for a second and look at the physical presence, physical analysis, any indication from his clothing, from the blood that was coming out of him when he got bitten by a cactus, any clue whatsoever, any trace that he left that a dog could smell, the non-digital analysis, Lorree, would point to Jay Slater never being there, to the point where, and I'll get to this again in a minute, to the point where Cipriano Martin said after 2 weeks of searching, we have to start thinking that the boy left this area. So the non-digital analysis, according to Cipriano Martin, the head of the search, said we have to think that he's not here, that he's gone somewhere else. Now, if we look at the digital analysis, sure, one of Jay's phones, one of possibly many of his phones, was pinging and was in that area. We can't deny that. But that's all we know, that his phone was. Anyone watching this video now, let's say you're watching from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, your phone could be pinging away if it got stolen yesterday in, well, I don't know, China. Does that mean that by digital analysis, you are in China? Of course not. There are 101 explanations why digital analysis could state a person seems to be here when they're absolutely not. But conspicuous by its absence is any digital analysis that actually shows the person, not the phone, the person, Jay Slater, was there. On the contrary, everything we've seen from that phone would indicate that Jay was not there. Someone smoking a cigarette on a step with a blanket covering them is not evidence that Jay Slater was anywhere. I mean, it's evidence to me that someone could well be trying to convince you of that, but until that phone pans around on the face of the person filming, I don't think any sane people are convinced. So not sure where Lorree's going with digital analysis, but if she's talking about the phone data, absolutely not. Indicates one of Jay's phones was there, but I would have thought the very fact that there is no indication that Jay himself was there, no trace of him there whatsoever, would say that needle is pointing towards foul play. And let me get back to what Cipriano Martin said. Cipriano Martin said, the very fact that we can't even find a trace of this boy up here makes me think, we've got to think, he said, we've got to think that he might have left this area. So, if Cipriano Martin's musings were correct there, Lorree, and let's say Jay's phone died and he left that area. Yeah, he didn't go down the ravine. There's no evidence he went down that ravine. If he left that area, if he went back to the road, if he went back on the footpath that went up to that ridge and then walked along that ridge towards Santiago del Teide, and if he happened to get to Santiago del Teide by, let's say, 6 in the evening, as some people saw him, would that be evidence that contradicted the digital analysis? Of course it would. So conspicuous by its absence is anything that is analysis that isn't digital. I would say a lot more reliable is the 9 or so people in Santiago del Teide that swore that evening they saw Jay Slater. But this is absent from Lorree's analysis. To her, digital analysis is all important. When that needle, in her opinion, goes towards accident, she can just shove aside the lack of physical evidence or the eyewitnesses that said, yeah, I believe that boy was here in Santiago del Teide. Why is this? Why do we have such a biased analysis and nothing that will either go down the middle or weigh up both sides at the same time? It smacks of, I don't know, being deluded in some way, brainwashed in some way, and not open to any other suggestions. But for me, digital analysis, no. If anything, that points towards foul play. Cipriano Martin knew this. He knew it. If the digital analysis was convincing, let's turn this around. If the digital analysis was convincing to the head of the search, Cipriano Martin, that Jay had been in that area, he would never, ever have said, we have to start thinking the boy left this area. It's that simple. He never, ever thought that digital analysis was convincing the boy was in that area. That's why he said we've got to think about other options, and that's why the forensic search of the Airbnb happened afterwards, because the digital analysis was not good enough to convince people that Jay was where his friends and everyone else said he was. Point number 12, let's try to wrap this up. Lorree says that many people cannot coordinate a cover-up. That many people cannot coordinate a cover-up. I think what she's saying is, with all of the different people involved in the Jay Slater case that are just saying accident, 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 whether it be Airbnb owner, whether it be the ex-cons, whether it be the narco friends of Jay, whether it be parents, whether it be the coroner, Lorree's point is that many people couldn't possibly all coordinate together a cover-up. And my argument to that is, well, there's no coordination needed. You don't need to coordinate a cover-up. You don't need everyone involved that agrees it's an accident to talk to each other and say, you say that, I'll say that. and this is how it's going to work. That's not how the vow of silence works. The way it is if you have a group of people, a series of individuals who could all suffer consequences by going against a certain narrative, and all of these people could suffer severe consequences if they go against the narrative. If, for example, there is foul play afoot, then that would imply that certain criminals, underworld characters, are the ones responsible for the foul play. Now, if any one of the people who has gone with the accident narrative suddenly reverses that and say, I've got something to say, I now think there is foul play and criminality, and I'll tell you what I think, that person knows that they are putting their head on the chopping block, so to speak. So you don't need any coordination. You just need every individual that is scared of bullying, intimidation, threats, aggression, crimes committed against themselves. All you need is that person to be worried and they go quiet. That's it. It's just people that if they say the wrong thing will get in trouble. Now, if you've been a teacher, you've seen this in a class. If someone in that class has, I don't know, done something wrong, destroyed something in the classroom, and the teacher doesn't know who it is, it's not coordination that has all 30 pupils in that class refusing to say who did or who caused the damage. It's just the vow of silence. You stand there in front of 30 kids. Who opened the cage, the hamster's cage, and let the hamster out? Well, let's say 29 of those 30 students really want to say it was big, beefy, bully Bobby over there that did it. It's not surprising that all 29 of those students just sit there silently. That is not, Lorree, a coordination of anything. It's not really a cover-up of anything. It is just those that know it's probably better they keep their mouth shut that decide to keep their mouth shut. And big bully Bobby, the hamster liberator, gets away with it because no one had the guts to step forward to say, I know who it was. So this whole, well, that many people couldn't coordinate a cover-up. They're not coordinating anything. And it's not really a cover-up. All they're doing is because that's the safest thing for them to do. I think if Lorree had worked in any capacity in law enforcement or helping those that do that, she'd understand this. But because her childlike mentality thinks lots of people in agreement equals coordinated cover-up, she doesn't quite get how simple silence is, how simple threats are when they work in an underground world. She doesn't get it. And what is her last point? Oh, yeah, well, it's a similar point. She says that Lorree says, why would everyone and their dog collude in a cover up of a death that shows zero signs of foul play? Well, that's the problem, Lorree. This death doesn't show zero signs of foul play. This death shows many, many signs of foul play over and over and over again. We don't have to go through them all. I've just mentioned the 5 key witnesses. If this were an accident, why aren't they showing up? We have to look at the toxicology report, J substances, who's supplying that. No, believe me, there are multiple signs of foul play. So if we change Lorree's statement, how does it sound then? Why would everyone and their dog collude in a cover-up of a death that indicates many signs of foul play? Well, the answer obviously is if they're involved with foul play, if any of them have broken the law in any way, if any of them are liable to be arrested, charged in court, then of course they're going to be silent. And again, it's not really collusion. It is just what I call the vow of silence. There is nothing to be gained from the likes of Chris Pennington, Ivor Lovelace, Adrian Strawn. There's no benefit at all to them to start suddenly expressing their ideas that criminality is afoot here. I don't see how their lives benefit at all from doing that unless they've got some kind of guilt conscience that makes them feel a lot better. But I would believe that the consequences of any one of those searchers coming forward to say, you know what, not all of what we said was true. The consequences of that could be absolutely life-changing and horrendous. It depends who's in the background here. It depends who who orchestrated all this. Because there are certain patterns of behavior you see in the J Slater case that indicate someone is pulling strings. Just one example of that. And Lorree, I wish you would give examples. I try to give an example every time I make a statement. I try to give you a simple example, and your lack of examples, Lorree, are, I think they reveal that you don't have much substance to what you're saying. So just give a few examples whenever you can. An example of what looks like orchestration is you have Lucy doing her back to the camera interview, followed immediately by Ophelia doing a back to the camera interview in what is an accident, apparently. Well, if you go through all of the interviews of people involved in missing child, missing boy, missing anyone, you can count on one hand, after watching hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of newsreels about people being interviewed about the missing person, how many people said, oh, I must do this back to the camera. But it's accidental. Yeah, I still must do it back to the camera. And in this case, we have two. An old lady running an Airbnb and a young, it seems, unemployed teenage girl that gets to travel the world and live the life of ease. Why is it then that these two anomalies in the whole list of people that have given interviews regarding missing persons would choose to do it back to the camera? That has to be a red flag. It is so unlikely that those two ladies decided independently that the best thing for them was to appear to the world back to the camera. I mean, the odds are just astoundingly low. And yet we have the likes of Lorree saying, "Oh no, that's not a sign of anything. That's just normal. That's normal. That's how we do it in Tilbury. If we're interviewed, like we put the back to the camera. Don't want anyone to know who we are, you know." And those very same people that do back to the camera interviews when they make a video, they do it totally in the dark because they too are scared shitless of the consequences of putting their face to the camera. Let's leave it there. Hasta luego, adios, hasta la vista. Happy Monday.